when phones just ring, emails ignored, service drugs high, can't be afforded. You're stuck down low, heat turned off, doors roll lock, emergency lighting off, fire hazards high, no one to fix. One more to say, it's the GSA way.
Hello, welcome to This is the GSA Way. This is the GSA Way 15. The tide has turned, but has anything changed? I don't know about you, but I have missed that theme tune. If you have, I will make it available to you so you can play it whenever you like. It will be available on the GreenSquareAccord resident support site and as a YouTube video where you can, if you were clever enough, follow links so you can get that, the audio only as an MP4 or MP3, whatever it is. On to today's. Unfortunately, my housing sector guest today had to cancel due to feeling under the weather and ill. But that gives me time to do something I've been meaning to do for a while. And it comes on the back of some big news. So what we're going to cover today is GreenSquareAccord have now decided to drop communication bans. Drop communication plans, I should add. They're not bans. They are bans, aren't they? But anyway, they're removing the communication bans, plans, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to look into why. Why might they suddenly change this? What's the change of heart? What's caused this change of direction from GSA? Could it be? And we will cover the information that I have uncovered from my Freedom of Information Acts and the amount of public money that is being spent via housing benefit to GreenSquareAccord from just 11 councils. Could it be the Section 22 delays, which is another legal delay? We've also had the fire assessment risks that were late, the lack of information from the Section 22, their inability to provide stuff that they're legally obliged to pay for. And could it be that with Ruth Cooke sitting on the board of the National Housing Federation and the fact that I am tagging more and more people, including National Housing Federation, could it be that her failures are no longer just an embarrassment to the GSA way, they're also an embarrassment to the National Housing Federation, the Chartered Institute of Housing, and the wider sphere of housing professionals? All that and more in this episode of This is the GSA Way 15. The tide has turned, but has anything changed?
Communication plan removed, but has anything changed?
So I received an email this week with a letter attached to it. And this, on the surface at least, it reads like good news. Perhaps it will be. And I am optimistic in the long run that this is a step in the right direction and it is going to be good news. The tide has turned, as I've said. Let's hope that this is a new dawning. And I'm not going to put words in their mouth. We don't do that on This is the GSA Way. We let them speak honestly from themselves. So let's first of all have a look at some of the extracts from the letter I received this week.
Dear Mr. Jenkins, as discussed in our previous correspondence, we have revisited our position on how we communicate with you, and I am pleased that I can now provide an update. As you are aware, our existing position has been that while we acknowledge that your wife has previously provided written authority for you to act on her behalf, we had declined to act on this to ensure that colleague well-being was not compromised and communication was not duplicated across colleagues, causing operational challenges. It has been our position that all contact will be with your wife as the named leaseholder, with the exception to this being any communication where we have a statutory responsibility to communicate with you directly, such, for example, a subject access request. We acknowledge that some of the arrangements in place have caused internal confusion and potential data issues, for which we have separately apologised and offered compensation. As part of our commitment to building a relationship of improved trust and confidence, we now intend to remove these arrangements.
They say they've revisited their position and are now removing the arrangements in the interests of trust and confidence. But look at the framing. The restriction was justified on the basis of protecting colleague well-being and avoiding operational challenges, yet that's never been evidenced or proven. There's been no finding, no formal determination, nothing that demonstrates I compromised anyone's well-being. Now they acknowledge internal confusion and data issues, but the underlying narrative about why it was necessary remains intact. The structure changes, the justification doesn't.
In good faith and in full intention to mitigate future miscommunications, I respectfully suggest you consider changing your current email address. Our investigation highlighted errors made by both GSA colleagues and external bodies, and it is possible that the preface of email : in your email address is inadvertently being interpreted as the communication type, rather than as part of the email address itself, leading users to remove it in error and communications being sent to the incorrect recipient. I appreciate changing an email address can be disruptive and something you may feel you do not want to consider, and I hope you accept this feedback in the spirit it is intended.
They refer to external bodies making errors, but the only occasions where the incorrect email address has been used were where it was passed on by GreenSquareAccord themselves, including to their legal representatives and even to an MP. I do not experience this issue with any other organisation. The address is widely known within GSA and is even embedded within their own internal blocking systems. This isn't a design flaw in my email address, it's an administrative failure on their side. Yet again, the framing suggests the problem sits elsewhere when the confusion originated internally.
As the revised arrangements are likely to increase your engagement with wider GSA colleagues, I would like to remind of your previous commitment to not referring to named colleagues, as a minimum any colleague below director level, in any social media activity. This reminder is made as part of our duty of care to colleagues and as a measure to support colleague well-being. While we acknowledge that service shortfalls can cause considerable customer frustration, we will not tolerate unacceptable behaviour towards our colleagues. Our policy on unacceptable behaviour is on our website. Microsoft Word, Unacceptable Behaviour Policy. As with all customers, we will invoke actions within this policy should it be necessary to do so.
This reference to a previous commitment is misleading. The undertaking they are referring to was voluntarily offered by me under legal pressure to conclude proceedings. GreenSquareAccord then publicly claimed they had secured undertakings as a victory, which was untrue and remains published on their website today. They subsequently took me back to court alleging I had breached those undertakings. I had not, and the case was dismissed. Both legal actions were dismissed. The undertakings were time-limited and have expired. To now invoke that expired commitment as part of a warning about conduct without acknowledging the failed court action omits critical context. There has been no finding that I have harmed colleague well-being and no evidence provided of indiscriminate naming. Where individuals are named, it is in relation to actions formally taken in their professional capacity. Accountability is not unacceptable behaviour.
As part of this policy, we also refer to levels of persistent or demanding contact that can adversely impact on services provided to our wider customers. While we are committed to responding to information requests proportionately and within our wider policy or legal frameworks, there may be occasions where we need to manage customer expectations as to the level or type of information we can provide. This may relate to the volume of requests made or the level of detail requested. Again, I have included this information in good faith to support mutual understanding and cooperation moving forward.
It's also difficult to accept the suggestion of persistent or demanding contact when my email was blocked and communication was tightly restricted. The claim about volume was previously relied upon in their affidavit, repeated in response to the ITV news story, and remains published on their website on the same page, where they claimed they had secured undertakings as a court victory. That page still states that I contacted them hundreds of times, using volume to imply undue contact. But context matters. When responses aren't provided, when issues aren't resolved, and when follow-ups are required simply to get acknowledgement, one inquiry quickly becomes several. If matters were addressed constructively and promptly, there would be no need to chase. Volume without context is not harassment. It is often the byproduct of not receiving a response in the first place.
Okay, look, there you have it. That's a letter in full. Like I said, I genuinely think, and I hope this is a step in the right direction. And this isn't anything against the author of this letter, Alex Hicken. I think part of the reason that the change of heart has happened is because we've got new senior management coming in, and they're looking at this from the outside and going, well, hang on a minute, maybe you need to change your approach here. And I think this is the situation that Alex has found herself in. And I'm not slating her for authoring this letter. But what it does prove is, again, the power imbalance. GreenSquareAccord have to maintain that narrative that I was the problem and that warrants the behaviour, which has been going on for the last 10 years. I started raising issues in 2016. Communication plans were brought in, I don't know, around 2020, 21, something like that. But the problem is still, it's being highlighted. I'm the problem. I'm the issue. It's me sending too many emails. It's me doing this. It's me. No, actually, the blame sits with you. And if we're going to rebuild trust, that narrative has to be changed. There has to be some ownership on that. Whilst I accept, let's move forward. Let's go with the communication. And I will. I've already, the response will go out Monday morning. I'm recording this on Sunday. It will go out tomorrow morning. And yeah, let's move forward. But let's stop framing me as the issue when I know I'm not. Let's look at some of the reasons as to why the sudden change in heart.
Growing visibility and growing scrutiny, from resident voice to sector platform. The year to date, as of 22nd February 2026, the visibility of the platforms has grown significantly. The housing sector website has recorded around 7,000 visits so far in 2026, with more than 6,400 unique visitors and over 11,000 page views. That's up more than 130% year on year, alongside over 126,000 Google search impressions. The GreenSquareAccord support site has also continued to grow, with over 1,300 visits and around 2,000 page views so far this year, nearly 50% up on last year. On LinkedIn, the audience now stands at more than 13,400 followers. In the last 7 days alone, posts have generated around 12,000 impressions, with over 1,400 profile views in the past 90 days. The audience includes housing professionals, directors, and government staff. What began as a single resident raising concerns is now visible, searchable, and reaching a sector-level audience. And what's important here is that this audience is no longer limited to frustrated residents. The data shows that people working inside the housing sector are reading, engaging, and following. Housing officers, managers, directors, senior leaders, even government and regulatory professionals are part of that audience. The scrutiny is now professional as well as personal. We are also naming and challenging sector bodies, including the National Housing Federation, where Ruth Cooke holds a senior leadership position. So this isn't confined to one organisation. When issues are raised now, they ripple beyond GreenSquareAccord. The regulator of social housing, sector bodies, housing associations and professionals across the country are seeing the content. The reach is measurable, the engagement is visible, and the audience is increasingly senior. What that means is simple. The conversation can no longer be ignored, contained, or dismissed as the concerns of a single resident. The scrutiny now sits within the wider housing sector itself. The questions can no longer be ignored.
Okay, so look, it's clear. Like Muhammad Ali said, it ain't bragging if it's true. It's becoming harder and harder to ignore me. The platform's now getting eyes, it's getting attention. So when I put out a Freedom of Information request to lots of councils, 11 of which responded, and the ones that haven't have shirked off with, and it was particularly noticeable that it was one where GreenSquareAccord have quite a lot of influence. They pushed back, said, oh, it's just too much hard work, we're not able to do it. The councils that did respond, there were 11 of them, confirmed that over the last 3 years in housing benefit, they have paid £41 million to GreenSquareAccord. Now, this is important because when we've pushed back, me and my resident neighbours here, when we've pushed back with 2 Section 22 requests, first of all, they were late, which, as we've already acknowledged, is legally they have to do this. They have to provide it. So they responded late. And when they have responded, they've found mistakes and they've had to reduce that figure. That's happened twice when they backdated costs October last year. And with this this year's costs that have come out again, there are mistakes in it. So if a council that, let's say, is paying £1 million last year in housing benefit, which some will be rent, and this was the other important thing, councils weren't able to separate the figure from rent and service charge, because if you could, you'd have a good understanding of how much rent a 3-bedroom house in Birmingham is valued at, so you'd know what the market value of that would be, and then you could work out how much was service charge. They don't break it. It's just one last figure paid out in taxpayers' money in the form of housing benefit. But if they were, bearing in mind Birmingham City Council can't afford to pay their bin men at this point, if they were to look and to get a reduction in these costs, they would save themselves lots of money. Now, because of this oversight, because I'm pushing back on this, it again becomes harder to just go, oh, he's just one noisy person. He's just this. I'm asking questions that are realistic. I'm asking questions that council should be asking. I'm asking questions that MPs should be asking. And I'm not alone on that. Layla Moran asked in Parliament, Prime Minister's questions, that GreenSquareAccord service charges are going up and up without getting that value for money. So it's harder to ignore. They're going to have to be seen to engaged because now they're having to change the narrative slightly without admitting that they were wrong, but we're working with them. And maybe the hope, maybe the plan is that they can work with me to keep me silent. Now, in the past, Ruth Cooke did that. When I created, when it was just GreenSquare, she was brought in to oversee the merger. When it was GreenSquare, I had pulled together a 76-page document on all the failings and stuff that I'd received from subject access requests, internal emails where they were blaming each other, something they were doing up until last week, still blaming. It's property services, it's not us, it's building maintenance, it's planning. They just blame each other. When I had this document ready to go, Ruth Cooke and her then right-hand woman, Rachel Crownshaw, who was, we don't know, moved on, moved out. She gets through senior leaders like I get through socks. When the merger happened, I was then put on a communication plan. So there was a very much, we're talking to Ben, we're working with Ben because we want him quiet before the merger happens. And then there was the mergers happened, put him on a communication plan, blame him. He's the problem. Take him to court. He's the problem. And remember, the court action followed the week after I'd taken the housing ombudsman had come back and ruled in my favour. There was a meeting at GreenSquare's offices by the senior leadership team to discuss the housing. There were lots of things discussed in the meeting. It wasn't all about me, but to discuss the housing ombudsman and how they were going to deal with me and the noise I was making. At that point, they decided that legal action was the way, and this legal action then landed in my lap. So I would be hesitant to jump into bed with any of them. And until there is change, a change of CEO, it can't just be Ruth Cooke with a new corporate strategy, as she likes to do, rebrand it, it's another corporate strategy, here we go again. No, it has to be substantial change. When that happens, maybe I can work with GreenSquareAccord. Perhaps there is a tougher board in place asking more rigorous questions. Perhaps I can work with them on that. But the narrative has to completely change. They have to agree. They have to give up on Steve Hayes' narrative that I'm the victim here. I'm the one who's being bullied. I'm the one who's being persecuted. I'm the one. It's not about you, Steve. It's about residents. It's about taxpayers' money. It's about the failures of GreenSquareAccord. And I'm just one voice. Just so happens that I now have an audience. This is where we find ourselves. I will keep you updated on whatever happens to the letter and the response and how the communication plan changes. And let's see if the GSA way has changed, if they can embrace a new way of working, and if they can finally. And by the way, later on this afternoon, tomorrow, Monday afternoon, I have a meeting with the tenant satisfaction measures. They're coming round. This is David Luscombe and Zoe Peckover. And Zoe Peckover put in an email not too many years ago where she said, I will not be in attendance in any meeting where Ben Jenkins is in attendance. So they are having to soften their language, and perhaps it is due to tenant satisfaction measures. Maybe the rest of it is just by the by. We'll find out. Look, I've gone on too much as it is. Thank you very much indeed for all your support. Thank you to everyone who continues to follow and like and share, and everyone who reaches out via email to say keep up the great work. It means a lot. I do all of this unfunded, on my own dime, on my own time. So much because I want to be famous. And what else was it that idiot gas man said? He wants to be clearly someone with too much time on his hand who wants to be famous. No, I'm doing this because someone has to hold you all accountable. Let's get it changed. Let's get a new leadership in, ideally, but that maybe won't happen. But look, this might be the start of something new. It's a very small, tentative step. Let's see where it leads to. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Stay strong. This has been the GSA way.
One more to say, it's the GSA way. Home damp and creaky, hedges overgrown, money's being wasted. Where did it all go? Walls start dripping.